You're sitting at your kitchen table, morning light spilling across the counter. The steam from your cup of coffee curls into the air as you take the first bite of your usual breakfast. It's comforting, familiar, the same way you've started your day for years. But within hours, you notice it. You can't recall where you put your reading glasses. Later, a familiar neighbor's name escapes you. You laugh it off, blaming age or a bad night's sleep. But what if this creeping forgetfulness wasn't inevitable? What if it was being fed, literally, by what you ate just this morning? As a neurologist specializing in seniors' brain health, I've seen far too many patients whose memory decline was not just a slow march of time, but a direct result of their diet, particularly one seemingly harmless breakfast habit. This isn't about greasy fast food or obvious junk. No, the real culprit often hides behind cheerful packaging and heart-healthy claims. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another health tip made just for you. If you enjoyed this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. Let me tell you about Mrs. Caldwell, 72, a retired school librarian. She came to me worried about small lapses, forgetting her grocery list, missing appointments. Nothing alarming at first, until the day she left her stove on and nearly caused a fire. When we examined her diet, one thing stood out. Every morning for decades, she started her day with a generous bowl of a certain whole-grain cereal, topped with dried fruit and sweetened yogurt. It seemed wholesome enough, until we looked closer. Hidden within those crunchy flakes and fruit bits was a sugar content rivaling that of a dessert, combined with additives that inflamed her blood vessels and weakened the delicate barrier protecting her brain from toxins. This isn't just a theory. Studies show that high glycemic breakfasts can cause rapid spikes in blood sugar, followed by crashes that leave your brain starving for steady energy. Over time, these swings damage the hippocampus, the memory center of your brain. The danger is amplified in older adults because the brain's natural defenses are already compromised. And here's the part that alarms me most. These foods are marketed as healthy to seniors, often endorsed by smiling doctors in commercials or plastered with nutrition seals. The truth is far less cheerful. Every spoonful you take could be silently fueling inflammation, shrinking your brain's processing power, and stealing memories you can't afford to lose. If a breakfast you've trusted for decades could sabotage your memory, what else might be lurking on your table? And if a bowl of cereal can quietly erode brain health, imagine what happens when it's paired with other hidden threats in your morning routine. Because the cereal is just the beginning. By the time you reach your 60s, your brain is not the same fortress it once was. In your younger years, the brain's defenses, particularly the blood-brain barrier, worked like a well-trained security team, carefully screening what could pass from your bloodstream into your brain tissue. But with age, those defenses weaken. Tiny gaps appear, and substances that would have once been kept out can now slip in and cause trouble. Think of the blood-brain barrier as a mesh filter. In your 20s and 30s, that mesh is tightly woven, allowing only the cleanest, safest materials through, like oxygen, glucose, and essential nutrients. But as you age, the mesh loosens. The reasons are complex: natural wear and tear on blood vessels, reduced collagen in the barrier's structure, chronic inflammation, and long-term exposure to toxins. Even mild hypertension or elevated blood sugar, common in older adults, can accelerate this breakdown. This matters because many compounds in processed breakfast foods are small enough to cross this compromised barrier. Refined sugars, artificial sweeteners, preservatives, and certain fats can all slip through. Once inside, they don't just float harmlessly. They interact with your neurons, triggering inflammation and oxidative stress, two of the most potent drivers of memory decline and cognitive impairment. Let me tell you about Mr. Alvarez, 68, a retired civil engineer who prided himself on eating light in the mornings. His breakfast? A slice of white toast with margarine, a small fruit-flavored yogurt, and a cup of coffee sweetened with flavored creamer. He believed he was doing his heart a favor by avoiding heavy meals. But when he began struggling to recall familiar street names and misplacing important documents, his wife grew concerned. Brain imaging revealed inflammation patterns consistent with diet-induced metabolic stress. The foods he ate daily, were slipping past his weakened blood-brain barrier, causing a slow but steady assault on his neurons. Here's the science. Your neurons rely on a delicate balance of glucose, amino acids, and fatty acids to function properly. Flood them with high glycemic sugars, inflammatory oils, or artificial additives, and that balance is disrupted. Imagine trying to run a precision machine while pouring syrup and sand into the gears. It might keep running for a while, but damage is inevitable. And here's something most people never realize. Once the blood-brain barrier is compromised, the damage can become a vicious cycle. Toxins slip in, cause inflammation, and that inflammation further weakens the barrier, allowing even more harmful compounds to enter. It's a loop that accelerates cognitive decline if left unchecked. So if the very gatekeeper of your brain is losing its strength, what happens when you add a steady stream of sugar-heavy cereals, processed spreads, and chemical-laden creamers to your morning ritual? The answer is the perfect storm for memory loss. And if you think sugar is the only villain in your breakfast bowl, you're about to meet an even more subtle threat, one hiding in plain sight on grocery shelves, wearing a smile and a healthy choice label. For decades, sugar-loaded cereals have been a breakfast staple in countless homes, marketed as a cheerful, healthy start to the day. The bright boxes, the whole grain claims, and the pictures of fruit and sunshine all paint the picture of wellness. But peel back that glossy marketing, and what you often find is a chemical and sugar cocktail that can silently sabotage your brain health. The problem begins with the high glycemic load. Cereals made with refined grains, even when fortified with vitamins, digest quickly, flooding your bloodstream with glucose. In younger bodies, insulin may still be efficient enough to clear this surge. But for seniors, whose insulin sensitivity has often diminished, these rapid spikes can linger, causing oxidative stress and inflammation in brain tissue. Over time, repeated exposure damages neurons in the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for forming and recalling memories. I remember treating Mrs. Hamilton, 70, who had a fondness for a particular bran and fruit cereal. She chose it because it boasted high fiber and was labeled heart healthy. Yet when we examined her dietary log, we found that one serving contained over 18 grams of sugar, and she was pouring nearly double the serving size. She noticed she often felt energized after breakfast, but by mid-morning, she'd hit a wall, struggling to focus during her volunteer work at the library. Her husband even joked about her vanishing grocery list memory. But what was happening wasn't a joke. It was the direct result of repeated blood sugar roller coasters hitting her brain each morning. It's not just the sugar itself. Many cereals contain preservatives like BHT, artificial colors, and synthetic flavorings, all of which can cross a weakened blood-brain barrier. Studies suggest that certain artificial dyes may interfere with neurotransmitter function, affecting mood and memory. Combine that with refined carbs, and you've created the ideal environment for neuroinflammation. The damage doesn't always appear overnight. In many seniors, the symptoms creep in subtly, forgetting a grandchild's birthday, repeating a story in the same conversation, losing track of medications. Each of these moments can be an early sign of diet-related cognitive strain. And here's the cruel twist. Even cereals labeled low sugar can be deceptive. Manufacturers often replace sugar with artificial sweeteners like aspartame or sucralose, which can disrupt gut bacteria. Since the gut and brain are connected via the gut-brain axis, an unhealthy gut can directly impair cognitive function, something most seniors are never warned about. In the end, that morning bowl of wholesome goodness might be more accurately described as a daily neurotoxin dose. The combination of sugar surges, chemical additives, and artificial sweeteners forms a triple threat to memory health. If sugar-loaded cereals can do this much harm under the guise of being healthy, what happens when they're paired with another hidden villain, one that spreads across your toast, smells rich and buttery, and yet slowly suffocates your brain cells from the inside out? That golden smear on your morning toast, smooth, rich, and satisfying, may feel harmless, even wholesome. For decades, margarine and certain processed spreads have been sold as heart-healthy alternatives to butter. But in reality, many of these products are silent saboteurs, delivering trans fats and highly processed oils directly into your bloodstream, and eventually into your brain. Trans fats are chemically altered oils created through hydrogenation, a process that turns liquid vegetable oils into semi-solid spreads. While this transformation makes them cheap, shelf-stable, and easy to spread, it also changes their structure in a way that your body, and especially your brain, struggles to handle. Unlike natural fats, trans fats embed themselves into cell membranes, making them rigid and less functional. In brain cells, where membrane flexibility is essential for communication between neurons, this rigidity can slow signal transmission, impair learning, and weaken memory retention. I recall working with Mr. Pearson, 74, a retired postal worker who started each morning with 2 slices of toast slathered in margarine. He wasn't a heavy eater, and he rarely indulged in sweets, so he couldn't understand why his doctor flagged early cognitive decline during a routine checkup. When we reviewed his diet, the daily dose of trans fats stood out. His blood tests revealed elevated inflammatory markers, and brain scans showed early signs of reduced white matter integrity, the network that allows different brain regions to communicate effectively. Removing trans fats from his diet and replacing them with healthier fats was one of the first steps in slowing that decline. The problem is even worse for older adults because aging brains are already more vulnerable to oxidative damage. Trans fats not only raise bad cholesterol, LDL, and lower good cholesterol, HDL, they also contribute to microvascular damage, tiny injuries in the small blood vessels that nourish brain tissue. Over time, these microinjuries disrupt oxygen and nutrient delivery, starving neurons and accelerating memory loss. Even products marketed as trans fat-free can contain small amounts due to labeling loopholes. In many countries, if a serving contains less than 0.5 grams, it can legally be labeled as 0. But if you're eating that spread every day, those small amounts add up quickly. Adding to the problem are the highly refined vegetable oils, often used in these spreads, soybean, corn, and canola oils that have been heated, bleached, and deodorized. This processing creates oxidized compounds that can cross a weakened blood-brain barrier and fuel neuroinflammation. For seniors, the message is clear. Your choice of spread matters more than you think. Natural fats, from sources like avocado, extra virgin olive oil, or small amounts of grass-fed butter, are far gentler on the brain. Yet, most people keep reaching for the processed tub simply because it's habit, a habit that might be shaving years off their cognitive health. If a thin layer of trans fats can silently weaken your brain's communication lines, what happens when your morning drink turns into a sugar and chemical bomb that spikes your energy, only to send your memory crashing hours later? To most people, a small cup of flavored yogurt, or a splash of creamy sweetness in their coffee, feels like an innocent indulgence, maybe even a healthy one. After all, yogurt is full of probiotics, and creamers are just a little treat to make coffee taste better, right? Unfortunately, for many seniors, these dairy-based breakfast add-ons are hidden landmines for brain health. The first problem lies in flavored yogurts. While plain, unsweetened yogurt can be a nutrient-rich food, the flavored versions found in most grocery stores often contain as much sugar as a dessert. Many have fruit purees that are more syrup than fruit, plus stabilizers, thickeners, and artificial flavors. For an older brain, that high sugar load in the morning sets off the same chain reaction we've already discussed. Blood sugar spikes, insulin stress, inflammation, and ultimately, damage to the hippocampus. Then there's the issue of coffee creamers, especially the flavored, non-dairy varieties that line supermarket shelves. Most aren't cream at all, but a mix of hydrogenated oils, corn syrup solids, artificial sweeteners, and chemical emulsifiers. When poured into hot coffee, these compounds don't simply disappear. They mix into your bloodstream and can easily cross a compromised blood-brain barrier. I think of Mrs. Lee, 69, a retired art teacher who swore by her healthy breakfast ritual: a small fruit yogurt, whole grain toast, and coffee with vanilla creamer. She'd even switched to sugar-free creamer, thinking it was better for her. But after a year of worsening brain fog and difficulty recalling her lesson plans for her volunteer classes, we discovered her sugar-free creamer contained sucralose and carrageenan, both linked to gut microbiome disruptions and inflammation. For someone with an aging brain, that gut imbalance created a direct negative impact on memory and focus. The brain-gut connection is often underestimated. When artificial sweeteners and emulsifiers harm beneficial gut bacteria, It alters the production of neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. This imbalance can lead to mood instability, mental fatigue, and reduced cognitive sharpness, effects that are especially pronounced in seniors. The dairy dilemma is even more complicated for those who are lactose intolerant, a condition that becomes more common with age. Even small amounts of lactose can trigger low-grade digestive inflammation in sensitive individuals. That inflammation doesn't just stay in the gut. It can cause systemic inflammatory responses that reach the brain, further compromising memory. And the most deceptive part? Many of these products are marketed directly to seniors with phrases like light, low-fat, or sugar-free. But what they remove in fat or sugar, they often replace with chemicals or artificial fillers that can be equally, if not more, damaging over time. For older adults determined to protect their memory, switching to plain, unsweetened yogurt topped with fresh berries or adding a splash of real milk or cream to coffee can make a world of difference. Unfortunately, most seniors never get this advice until memory problems have already started. And while these dairy traps can harm your brain, there's another morning ritual that's even more dangerous, one that pairs a caffeine jolt with a sugar surge so powerful it can leave your neurons gasping for energy just hours later. For millions of people, coffee is non-negotiable. That first sip signals the start of the day. But for many seniors, the modern version of coffee has drifted far from the simple black brew of decades past. Sweetened coffee drinks, whether from cafes, convenience stores, or instant mix packets, have become a daily habit. And this habit can quietly dismantle brain health. Caffeine in moderate amounts can sharpen focus and improve alertness. But when paired with large doses of sugar, flavored syrups, whipped cream, or sweetened condensed milk, it creates a dangerous biochemical roller coaster. The caffeine stimulates your central nervous system, raising heart rate and blood pressure. At the same time, the sugar floods your bloodstream, spiking insulin and delivering a rush of energy. For a short while, you feel great, alert, upbeat, ready to tackle the day. But within a few hours, the crash comes. Blood sugar plummets, insulin overshoots, and neurons find themselves short on steady fuel. This repeated cycle of spikes and crashes can impair synaptic plasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections. Over months and years, it accelerates cognitive wear, making it harder to retain new information or retrieve memories. Take Mr. Daniels, 66, a retired bus driver who loved his morning treat from a popular coffee chain, a large caramel latte topped with whipped cream. He believed it was harmless. After all, coffee is good for the brain, right? But the nutrition breakdown told another story. Over 50 grams of sugar in one cup, plus syrups and emulsifiers. Within 6 months of drinking it daily, he began experiencing more frequent word-finding pauses and occasional disorientation while driving familiar routes. Cutting out the sweetened coffee drinks, replacing them with plain coffee, and a small breakfast rich in protein and healthy fats made a noticeable difference within weeks. The damage goes deeper than temporary brain fog. Chronic high-sugar caffeine habits have been linked to increased levels of cortisol, the body's stress hormone. For seniors, elevated cortisol can shrink the hippocampus and impair long-term memory formation. And because aging brains already have reduced resilience to stress, the effect is magnified. Artificial sweeteners in sugar-free versions aren't much better. Ingredients like aspartame and acetylsulfame potassium can alter neurotransmitter balance and, in some cases, trigger headaches or mood changes. Paired with caffeine, these sweeteners can create unpredictable swings in energy and focus, leaving you mentally scattered. For seniors seeking sustained energy without the crash, the solution is surprisingly simple: coffee with minimal or no added sugar, combined with a breakfast that includes protein and healthy fats to slow glucose absorption. Not only does this stabilize blood sugar, it also gives your brain a steady stream of fuel, something you can't get from a sugar-laden coffee bomb. But if you think the danger stops at sweetened coffee drinks, think again. Some of the most deceptive brain-damaging breakfasts are marketed as natural and fruit-powered, yet they can overload your liver, spike your blood sugar, and impair brain signaling in ways that are even harder to reverse. Smoothies have become the poster child for healthy eating, brightly colored, packed with fruit, and often marketed with phrases like immune-boosting or brain-friendly. But for seniors, the reality can be quite different. Many breakfast smoothies, especially those sold pre-bottled or from chain cafes, are sugar bombs disguised as wellness drinks. The problem starts with the fruit base. While whole fruits contain fiber that slows sugar absorption, most smoothie recipes use fruit juice, purees, or syrups. Without the natural fiber intact, fructose, the primary sugar in fruit, hits your liver in concentrated doses. For younger, metabolically flexible bodies, this might not be a huge issue. But for seniors, excess fructose is harder to process efficiently. Over time, it can lead to fatty liver changes, elevated triglycerides, and increased insulin resistance, all conditions tied to cognitive decline. Then there's the portion problem. A medium smoothie at many chains can contain the sugar equivalent of 4 to 6 servings of fruit, plus add-ins like sweetened yogurt, honey, or agave nectar. Even without refined white sugar, the sheer fructose load can spike blood sugar almost as sharply, especially when the smoothie is consumed quickly on an empty stomach. I recall working with Mrs. Bennett, 71, a retired nurse who swapped her traditional breakfast for a daily green smoothie after watching a popular health program. She expected more energy and sharper focus. Instead, she began experiencing mid-morning crashes and increasing forgetfulness. When we analyzed her smoothie recipe, we found it included orange juice, frozen mango, pineapple, a banana, sweetened almond milk, and flavored protein powder, more than 60 grams of sugar in a single glass. For her aging brain, that was like starting the day with dessert. The science is clear. High fructose intake can increase uric acid production, which in turn reduces nitric oxide availability in blood vessels. Nitric oxide is critical for maintaining healthy blood flow to the brain. Less blood flow means less oxygen and nutrients delivered to neurons, setting the stage for cognitive decline. Even smoothies made at home can be problematic if they rely too heavily on high-sugar fruits. Many seniors assume that more fruit equals more health, not realizing that a balanced smoothie should include vegetables, healthy fats, and protein to blunt the sugar hit. Without those, you're essentially flooding your system with fructose, a problem amplified if your blood-brain barrier is already compromised. Worse still, commercial smoothies often include stabilizers, artificial flavors, or colorants that can disrupt gut health. And as we've discussed before, a disrupted gut can send inflammatory signals directly to the brain. To truly make a smoothie brain-friendly, the key is to focus on low glycemic fruits, like berries, pair them with greens, add healthy fats like avocado or nut butter, and include a clean protein source. But sadly, that's not what most people are drinking each morning. And if you think a natural fruit smoothie is the most deceptive breakfast item, wait until you hear about another classic, one that's been considered healthy for generations, but when processed into instant form, hides chemicals and sugars that quietly chip away at your memory. For decades, oatmeal has been hailed as a wholesome, heart-friendly breakfast, and in its purest form, it is. Steel-cut or old-fashioned rolled oats, cooked slowly and topped with fresh fruit or nuts, can be an excellent source of fiber and steady energy. But the instant oat packets stacked high on supermarket shelves are a very different story. For seniors concerned about memory and brain health, these convenient pouches can hide a cocktail of additives and sugars that work against you. The trouble begins with the processing. Instant oats are pre-cooked, dried, and rolled extra thin so they can cook in minutes. This processing removes some of the grain's natural structure, which means your body digests them far faster. The result, a higher glycemic index than traditional oats. For an aging brain, that rapid blood sugar spike in the morning is just another hit to neurons already stressed by decades of wear. But the real damage comes from the flavor packets. Most contain added sugars, sometimes in the form of brown sugar, cane syrup, or even high fructose corn syrup, along with artificial flavors and colorants. Many also include preservatives to extend shelf life and emulsifiers to keep the ingredients from clumping. For a brain whose blood-brain barrier may already be compromised, these compounds can cross into neural tissue and trigger low-grade inflammation. Mr. Whitaker, 73, a retired accountant, came to me puzzled. He had always eaten healthy breakfasts, usually a bowl of maple-flavored instant oatmeal with raisins, But over the last year, he noticed an increasing tendency to forget client names when doing part-time tax work, and he felt mentally sluggish by late morning. When we broke down his diet, that daily oatmeal delivered nearly 20 grams of sugar, plus artificial caramel coloring and gargum. Over time, those hidden additives were contributing to both blood sugar instability and inflammation in his brain. Even the so-called sugar-free varieties aren't necessarily safe. Manufacturers often swap sugar for artificial sweeteners like sucralose, which can alter gut bacteria, and maltodextrin, which still spikes blood sugar almost as quickly as sugar itself. Why is this so dangerous for seniors? Because aging brains rely on steady glucose delivery and minimal inflammation to maintain cognitive performance. Instant oats, with their rapid digestibility and additive load, can sabotage both at once, and the effect is magnified when paired with other high-sugar breakfast items, like a sweetened coffee or a fruit smoothie. If you love oats, the best choice is to return to the basics: steel-cut or old-fashioned oats, cooked slowly with no added flavors. Pair them with berries, cinnamon, and a source of healthy fat like walnuts or almond butter to keep blood sugar stable. That way, you still enjoy the comfort of a warm breakfast without the hidden cognitive costs. But while instant oats might fool you with their whole grain label, there's an even more insidious danger lurking in your breakfast pantry, one that doesn't just raise blood sugar, but can also disrupt your gut, your hormones, and the delicate signaling network that keeps your memory intact. Most people think of breakfast as harmless fuel for the day ahead, but what they don't realize is that the processed foods in their morning routine often carry an invisible payload, a mix of preservatives, artificial colors, and emulsifiers. This additive avalanche might keep products fresh, appealing, and convenient. But for an aging brain, it's like inviting unwelcome guests into a fragile home. Preservatives such as BHA, butylated hydroxyanisole, and BHT, butylated hydroxytoluene, are common in cereals, granola bars, and even flavored oatmeal packets. While they prevent oils from going rancid, studies suggest they may also disrupt the endocrine system and cause oxidative stress in brain cells. Oxidative stress, in turn, damages neurons and accelerates the breakdown of cognitive function. Artificial colors like yellow 5, red 40, and blue 1 are often added to cereals, yogurt, and drink mixes to make them look more appetizing. While these colors may seem harmless, research has shown they can trigger behavioral changes, attention difficulties, and inflammation, especially when the blood-brain barrier is compromised, as it often is in seniors. Emulsifiers such as polysorbate 80, mono and diglycerides, and carboxymethylcellulose help maintain texture and prevent separation in coffee creamers, smoothies, and processed breakfast spreads. But in the gut, they can thin the protective mucus layer and alter the balance of beneficial bacteria. For seniors, this gut disruption can have a direct impact on brain health via the gut-brain axis, leading to increased inflammation and impaired neurotransmitter production. Mr. Hartman, 75, learned this the hard way. A widower who lived alone, he relied on quick breakfast foods: fruit-flavored instant oatmeal, a processed breakfast sandwich, and flavored coffee creamer. Over time, his daughter noticed he became more forgetful, struggled with names, and seemed more irritable. When we examined his diet, nearly every item contained multiple synthetic additives. Eliminating these foods and replacing them with whole, minimally processed options brought noticeable improvement in his mood and focus within 3 months. The danger of additives isn't just their direct effect on the brain. They often appear together, creating a cumulative impact. A breakfast of artificially colored cereal with preservative-laced milk substitute and emulsifier-filled creamer exposes the body to a daily chemical cocktail that it must work overtime to detoxify. For an older body with a slower metabolism, reduced liver efficiency, and diminished antioxidant defenses, that's a losing battle. And here's the sobering truth: you won't always find these chemicals easily on the label. They hide under names most people don't recognize, or they're added in small amounts to multiple products, so you never realize the total you're consuming. If you want to protect your memory, one of the most powerful steps you can take is to cut out unnecessary additives. Choosing fresh, whole foods and preparing simple breakfasts at home can drastically reduce your exposure. But removing dangers is only half the battle. The final step is replacing these harmful habits with brain-safe alternatives, meals that not only nourish your body, but actively support memory, focus, and long-term cognitive health. Over the past 9 sections, we've pulled back the curtain on some of the most common breakfast habits that quietly erode brain health, from sugar-loaded cereals to additive-filled creamers. The truth is simple but often overlooked. Aging changes how your body, and especially your brain, processes food. What once seemed harmless or even healthy can now tip the scales toward memory loss, brain fog, and accelerated cognitive decline. The good news, you're not powerless. By making intentional, informed choices, you can transform breakfast from a hidden threat into a cornerstone of brain protection. The key is to remove the major offenders, excess sugars, refined carbs, trans fats, artificial additives, and replace them with nutrient-rich, steady fuel foods. Let's start with a blueprint for a brain-safe breakfast. Low glycemic fruits. Swap fruit juice or syrup-laden options for fresh berries, kiwi, or sliced apple with the skin on. These provide antioxidants and fiber without spiking blood sugar. Healthy fats include sources like avocado, walnuts, almonds, or chia seeds. These nourish brain cell membranes and help maintain stable energy. Clean protein. Opt for eggs, Greek yogurt, unsweetened, cottage cheese, or a clean plant protein powder. Protein slows carbohydrate absorption and supports neurotransmitter production. Whole, unprocessed grains. If you love oats, choose steel-cut or old-fashioned rolled oats, cooked slowly and topped with cinnamon and nuts instead of flavored packets. Simple, real drinks. Enjoy coffee or tea without sweetened syrups, using just a splash of real milk or unsweetened nut milk. Or try warm lemon water for hydration and gentle detox support. Beyond specific foods, here are actionable rules for protecting your memory through breakfast. Eat earlier in the day. Avoid eating large or high-sugar breakfast right before bed. Your brain needs stable fuel during waking hours, not spikes followed by long inactivity. Pair carbs with fat or protein. This slows glucose absorption and prevents dramatic highs and lows that stress neurons. Read labels carefully. Watch for hidden sugars, anything ending in -Os, hydrogenated oils, and unfamiliar chemical names. Avoid diet or sugar-free marketing traps. These often replace sugar with artificial sweeteners that can still disrupt brain and gut health. Let me share one final patient story because it's proof that change works. Mrs. Caldwell, the retired librarian from Section 1, was devastated when she realized her beloved cereal and yogurt breakfast was harming her memory. But instead of giving up, she made small, steady changes, replacing her cereal with overnight oats made from steel-cut oats, topping them with blueberries and walnuts, switching to plain Greek yogurt, and sweetening with a touch of cinnamon instead of sugar. Within 3 months, she reported fewer foggy days, more energy in the mornings, and, most importantly, a return of confidence in her memory. You don't need to overhaul your diet overnight. Begin by removing one harmful breakfast habit at a time and replacing it with something brain-friendly. Every swap is a small victory that adds up over time. Your brain is your most valuable asset, and it's worth protecting every single day. The choices you make each morning can either chip away at it or help it thrive. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment with 1. If not, feel free to comment with 0 point. Your feedback means a lot to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the more you know, the more power you have to keep your memory strong for years to come.